Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. As of right now, we're trying to shoot for like a Tuesday night time frame in terms of recording, so feel free to stay tuned and stay updated on that. But fear not, if you miss it, it's always going to be available on YouTube under the channel of Zenitsu, as well as being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. So please feel free to do the social media doobly-doos thing and leave that rating, like, follow, subscribe, review, whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help support the podcast. Today, I am back with my ever so astute co-host Jay Stewart, and we're going to be basically talking about floodgates in pertain to Digimon and kind of like this trend that I've been noticing that's been going on with the game. Don't know if it's a good trend or a bad trend. It's just a trend that I thought was interesting and wanted to point out. But you want to know what is interesting? So we actually have a pretty good question of the week, and it kind of pertains to some Bandai news, not necessarily Digimon news, but Bandai news. So the question of the week is, what is your reaction to Bandai shutting down Battle Spirits Saga? So any listener, feel free to type your answer down in the comments below, or feel free to put it into chat, whatever you feel like. But Jay Stewart, what are your actual thoughts about Battle Spirits shutting down?
Yeah, so I'm not quite familiar with the Battle Spirits scene and everything. I'm not a player of Battle Spirits. I did try to take a look at the rules when they made the tutorial and everything at the beginning, just to kind of understand what they were doing. And it it seemed okay to me, but just wasn't my ballpark interest. And I know there is some fans out there, but I mean, I can't. I'm not one of them, unfortunately. So it is kind of sad to see that Bandai did kind of had to, like, players lost their game that they love and everything. But at the same time, to me, it's like the writing was kind of already on the wall. We saw stores, at least my locals, they refused to order any more Battle Spirits products after set two, and because it just stayed on the shelf, nothing was being sold of it, and it was kind of like what. And I know my locals was not the only one to do that. Like, Battle Spirits kind of had like a really bad rough patch at the beginning, and it was just so interesting. Like, I want to say it's interesting, it's just sad to see, because when you kind of look back and see what Battle Spirits was doing at like the launch and everything, they had celebrities, they had like I keep butchering that artist's name, the girl that sings Skater Boy, uh
Avril Lavigne.
Avril Lavigne, thank you. Like, they had her sponsoring it and everything, like making videos of it, tweeting and everything. They were doing cash prize tournaments that none of their other games had, and it was just like they were really pushing for this game to be really successful. So it's just kind of sad to see something that what I assumed Bandai actually truly loved and had a passion for, kind of just unfortunately have to shut it down.
I think you kind of summed it up pretty nicely, at least in my perspective of it, because, like, Battle Spirits, in my perspective, I think Bandai just completely and utterly mismanaged and mishandled. And that's part of the reason why it failed. Part of the reason, as we kind of all know, is Bandai's doing too much. Like, Battle Spirits released, 2 years ago? Because they're on set 6 now, so yeah, it would have been 2 years ago. And guess what also released 2 years ago, if not a little bit more than 2 years ago? I think, like, One Piece is 3 years ago, but I guess I spoiled that one. But yeah, so Battle Spirits had to compete with One Piece. There was no way it was competing with One Piece. Digimon was already having a hard time competing with One Piece. Granted, two different games, different audiences, at least I like to think they are. But yeah, like, even then, Battle Spirits also had to compete with Digimon. Battle Spirits for Western audiences have to compete with Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, even like some of the lesser known games that have been around for a while, like Vanguard, like there's just so much competition that, like, yes, it is very hard for a new IP to do well, which is why a game like Flesh and Blood was such an anomaly, was because it was a brand new IP that had a card game, and they managed to do things correctly, I guess, enough. Well, part of it was when um, Flesh and Blood released, because Flesh and Blood released like right at peak COVID hype. So, because that's when Argent Saga died, was during COVID hype, because we banked all of our hedges on in-store play, and then COVID killed that. But still, like, Flesh and Blood being able to take advantage and survive on COVID hype was definitely a huge boon to its staying power. They copied Magic's old tournament structure. The game was very competently and well designed. It just had everything going for it. And I'm not saying Battle Spirits doesn't, but there's elements to Battle Spirits that just don't seem attractive. One, the cards look ugly as sin. That's a huge discerning factor. At least I think the cards looked ugly as sin. As somebody who studied a little bit of graphic design, UI, and UX, the cards were awful. And I can say that confidently looking at a game like Force of Will's new and revamped card design, and those look awful, and that has a similar feel to Battle Spirits in a way. But Force of Will is just a shadow, like a zombie game, like running off of a small community, which is where I thought Battle Spirits was going to be able to survive because of how safe Bandai plays the printing game. But I guess it just wasn't feasible enough for them to actually want to keep it going, even though they realistically probably could. They just needed to scale back enough, and maybe they just weren't comfortable enough with how much they needed to scale back in order to keep the game alive, and they were just like, this isn't worth the effort. At least that's like my perspective.
Yeah, because I know before we recorded this podcast, I saw a Taste of Victory's video, and he kind of had a little brief history of what possibly the domino effect of what caused the end game of Battle Spirit Saga and everything. And one of the things that he mentioned was, now I could be completely wrong of how I understood this, but from my understanding, like in the very first set, as he explained, there was like people that went to Las Vegas trying to open up a bunch of booster boxes because there was like this one rare card almost every single deck needed, and you needed 4 copies of. And there was like players that reported that they did not get a single copy of a rare. And to me, when I'm thinking about the Digimon booster boxes, like I've had at least, give or take, at a normal booster box, with the exception of 2.0, 2.5, that's going to be the one because it's 2 sets combined. But like a normal, actual, regular booster box set, I normally get 2 copies of a rare. So usually 2 booster boxes, and I got my play sets of all the commons, uncommons, and rares and everything. But even like the other weird thing to me, it was like hearing that Battle Spirit's like very first booster box was they would get 6 SRs and only 1 alternate art. Potentially, and it just like kind of threw me off because I'm like thinking we get like 7 alt arts, or I'm sorry, not alt arts, 7 SRs, 2 alt arts, with the chance of one of those alt arts actually being a secret rare, and it kind of just baffled me when I heard how hard it was to get the cards.
Yeah,
For,
so
Battle Spirits.
So as far as like my commentary on that, like I heard that Bandai for that really wanted to make rares feel rare, because to us, rares are like just another card slot. Like it is a card slot, not an actual rarity. So Bandai wanted to make it feel like a rarity, and that only ended up pissing off the players in the very first set. And like the price of the booster box is reflected as such. They continued that trend into the second set as well, and by then players just really didn't want to open up boxes, because if this was going to be the normal thing, the game just wasn't like booster boxes weren't fun to open. and you kind of had to just keep sinking money into it. Like we're probably going to talk a little bit about Pokemon Pocket because I think that's a relevant topic. But like Pokemon Pocket and a lot of digital card games, like Hearthstone, like Magic the Gathering, even Dragon Ball Super's, like Dragon Ball Super Master, or not Masters, Fusion World's online client, like they don't do packs based on like a normal booster box pull ratio. They do packs like it's a gotcha game. So each individual pack isn't going to contribute towards you getting everything that you need. So you could end up pulling, let's just say, 5 packs of something, and you could end up with 5 copies of the exact same card because that's just how the pull rates of a gotcha system for pack seeding works. And yeah, like it does make the rarer cards feel more rare, but it also like it acts as a double-edged sword because on one end it entices players to want to buy more boxes to get the card that they want because it is harder to pull, and then they'll feel relieved when they get it. But on the other end, you have players where they just get frustrated, and if they don't relieve that frustration, they'll quit. Like they just straight up will quit, which is why like these digital card games, there's a very fine line and balance on how much you pull till you're able to get the type of card or the thing that you're looking for, which is why like a lot of games implement like a pity system. At least like I play a ton of gacha games, and they at least have like a pity system where if you opened up enough, you eventually get a higher chance each time uh till you get basically what you want. So the gacha games that don't do that are not very enjoyable because of that type of pull rate. But yeah, booster boxes just were not fun to pull on in Battle Spirits. I haven't opened any Battle Spirits, but that's from a psychology standpoint, it just was not a good call. It really was not.
Yeah, and I know like very early on too, again, kind of quoting the Taste of Victories video, but like in you know how in Digimon we have like some players have like a very big problem with like Magnamon X's protection and everything. But like if you think about it, that's 16 main sets that came in later. Literally by their second main set, they had their own version of Magnamon X through a promo card that you had to go through events and everything. And it was just like hearing that, I was like, why would they have a card that powerful that early into the game?
Well,
Like
I
I
mean,
understand it's supposed to be competitive, but like
yeah, I mean, look at Digimon just as a case example. Like we had Pulsemon really early in to our like first year of Digimon, and Pulsemon was such a huge meta defining card because for where the game currently was at, it was one of the most efficient and effective rookies we have ever had. And that was a promo that had like that card was $50 at one point because of just how good for where the current state of the meta was, because the card pool was so limited and that card was just better than most other rookies. It literally helped spawn Lord Knight to be more successful than it probably was estimated to be. And it also spawned Rookie Rush to also be more successful than it was expected to be. And I think like that's just Bandai mismanaging their promos because usually, based on my personal experience with Bandai games, it seems like they design sets like not necessarily in a vacuum, but pseudo in a vacuum. Like they'll design like 2 or 3 sets in a vacuum, have those like play off and play with each other, which is why you get like cards leaking in from one set to another, where it's just like, oh yeah, here's Mastimon in BT4, and then here's a Mastimon related card in BT5. That type of thing. We've seen that happen a lot, where it's just like there's no reason for this card to be in this booster pack, but it just felt like it leaked in from the design pool. Just to say, hey, you bought Mastimon, so here's a little bone so you could continue to buy booster boxes because, look, we supported your deck. But when it comes to promos and LM cards, at least for Digimon, they operate under a different design, not philosophy, but like they operate under a different design umbrella. And that design umbrella is agnostic of everything that's currently going on in the current game, which is why usually promos tend to break the game more than any other type of card. So seeing that in Battle Spirits so early is not really that big of a surprise because it happens with a lot of Bandai games. They're just really bad with promos. Um, but as far as like stores getting burnt, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that stores were supposed to like they were forced. They had zero choice in buying the first booster box. Like I think that was a thing. You feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Jay Stewart.
Yeah, no. Taste of Victories in his video, he said that the stores had to get minimum the first two sets in order to actually uh get the products and everything. They had to like pre-order in advance and everything.
Yeah, pigeonholing stores into doing something they don't want just to have access at the products that they do want is also not a smart move because that's how you burn a lot of bridges. So, like, there's two ways to burn bridges when it comes to LGSs, from what I've noticed. The first one is force them to do something they don't want to do because that's forcing them into a bad investment, essentially, or a possible bad investment, which is exactly what happened. And then the second thing is, God, now I'm forgetting. The second thing is, if the booster box doesn't perform as expected, it really puts a lot of distrust into the stores. So not only are you forcing them to buy something they don't want, but if that doesn't perform, then that's like the 1-2 punch essentially. That's why the game, like going back to Digimon as an example, that's why RB1 was so damaging for Digimon because stores had so much hype for it. It was sold as a premium set, so they had to invest more money into it compared to normal sets, and then it drastically underperformed. So stores backed off and held and didn't order as much as they needed to for respectively our BT16, EX6, and BT17, which are three of the most important sets that we currently have. Which is why there was like the big shortage and all that stuff. But yeah, that's just like a case example on how when a store perceives a product negatively, it really damages their trust in trying to continue with that product. And seeing how Battle Spirits had two sets back to back basically flop really hard, most stores were basically done at that point. So like that was definitely a big thing. And then I was at nationals twice, and both nationals I saw the Battle Spirits like players, and there was not even 100 players. Like there was maybe 20 to 40 players both times. When you compare that to like Digimon, we've always had over 200 players, at least always over 200. Even in this like last nationals, we still had over 200, even with it being more exclusive. You look at One Piece, and they've always had like over 500. Like, and then Battle Spirits is off in the corner, like playing by themselves because there's only like 20 to 40 people. Like, I think they had to cancel multiple tournaments because of the low attendance and poor player retention to competitive play for a game that was designed for competitive players.
Yeah, because that the whole canceling the tournaments and everything, that was something that was also mentioned in the video as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't exactly watch any videos outside of one talking about how bad the card frame and design was because like it, but that's the type of content I watch is more design based. Um, but yeah, no, I think like everyone that I've heard that played Battle Spirits says like yeah, the gameplay itself, disregarding the how dumb cores are, but everyone says like the gameplay is some of the most competitive and interactive gameplay that they've ever had in a TCG. And like I think that's cool, but at the same time, it felt like because of that, it immediately alienated players because like games, this is no uh, unknown fact, games thrive on their casual player base. If you can't foster a casual player base, then you're already alienating players from wanting to play it. So, like, a new person who knows nothing about the game would have a very hard time picking it up because the learning curve is so high. And people were criticizing Magic the Gathering for that for a very long time, and they tried their hardest to try to lower the barrier of entry so they could foster and attract newer players. Pokemon does a fantastic job of doing that. Yu-Gi-Oh it's awful at doing that, which is why like it shocks me that Yu-Gi-Oh is still as big as it is. I don't think like the player base is growing. I think it's more just players leave, and then when they're bored with whatever game they left, they go back to Yu-Gi-Oh. That kind of feels like the trend, but yeah, I think like the more hardcore you make the game, the harder it is to attract newer players to actually grow the game, especially with the fierce competition, as already mentioned before. But yeah, so you kind of alluded to. I know the card's name. It's Axebiter. Axebiter making the early metas somewhat problematic to play in. Also, really dampened the overall experience and burnt a lot of players out really quickly. So the thing that I kind of wanted to allude and transition to is the fact that like it's no shock that I've been playing Pokemon Pocket. I've made a couple of streams on it, and I've been debating about making like Pokemon Pocket content, because I do think that game is immaculately designed. Like, it has had one of the best early metas I have ever played. It was way better than Digimon's. It's way better than Magic's. It's way better, obviously, than Battle Spirits. Like, I know it's a digital card game, so there is a little bit of apples to oranges comparison, but like from a design standpoint, it had some of the best gameplay from from set 1 and set 1.5 like I've ever seen in the start of any game, and I've played a lot of games. So, are you playing you're playing Pokemon Pocket. I don't know how regularly you play. I play basically daily.
I mean, I kind of log in daily to do like the daily things and everything. Right now I'm still like struggling trying to get the cards I need from the newest set and everything.
Okay, so
Uh,
is
but
it just me, or does it feel like compared to the older sets, this new set feels incredibly hard to pull on cards?
yeah, I think it feels different because of the fact that um, like so to me this is what I'm thinking here, because the previous one we only had to open up one single pack and everything, which was the Muse Mythical Islands and everything.
Yeah,
But
and
the
it was a
difference
smaller
between
set, so it mathematically is going to be easier to pull on what you need from it.
yeah, and since they have two packs now, where there's each pack has their own different cards, that's what I think is making it a little bit harder, so to say. Because I mean, obviously, if you think about the very first one that they had, where it was like the what was it, the Mewtwo, Charizard, and the Pikachu packs
Yeah, Genetic
and everything.
Apex.
Like you could literally just focus on a single pack and make a whole deck from that alone. Like this one, you kind of need to open up both of them because they both have their own unique things about them that you need.
I think like I don't know exactly how big Space Time Smackdown is, but or Space Time Showdown, whatever it's called. I don't know how big the set is overall, but maybe the overall set size and then the like pack distribution on what's exclusive and what's shared. Like maybe there's something funky going on there that makes it feel harder to pull on, but like I barely pulled on any EXs, and I've opened like 30, 40 packs at this point. Just from saving up 10 pulls and open casually throughout the week. Like it just feels so much more difficult to pull what you need, and I think that's crazy. Obviously, they're probably gonna have to fix that going forward, because players are definitely acknowledging that the pull rates are hard, and kind of similarly to battle spirits, like you burn enough players, so like I'm already feeling the psychological manipulation of like, hey, I really want this, so I might as well just spend the money to try to get it. And like that's a very real psychological pull. It's easier when the transactions are smaller. So like a pack in Pocket is $1 versus a pack of like Battle Spirits at launch was like $4 or $5. So a little bit of a difference in terms of price gap, but like even then, like the fact that I just haven't gotten anything and I want to play with the new tools, because otherwise, if I don't play with the new tools, then I'll get bored with the game because I'm playing the same deck over and over again. And if I can't adapt to the meta because of the new tools, then I just quit as a player. And that's something that Pokemon Pocket is going to have to find a good balance for. But at least like what Pokemon Pocket has going for it is you do get free packs daily. So it at least helps give you like a collection progression, even if you're feeling depressed about actually not being able to play the decks that you want. So like it does have ways to alleviate itself. But like going back to actual gameplay, Pokemon Pocket has done something that most TCGs are very afraid of doing, and that is actually having a good meta. And by what I mean by that is putting a problematic card into the set, but giving players in the same set the answers to that problem. So that's something Pokemon Pocket has done a very good job at doing, on top of their card designs just being 100% on point on being able to have good counterplay and allowing a multitude of strategies to be able to exist and live. And like I wish I could say Digimon is trying to encroach on that, especially with the shift in design that they're doing with BT20 and BT21, where they're having like these specialized trait tags where it's just like, hey, this is the adventure trait, the chronicle trait, the seeker trait, the excel trait. But I think like the big problem is Bandai is trying to, like, they don't know how to balance that aspect of the game well enough to make it feel rewarding to be able to build not only just the, I'm just going to put it in quotation marks, the adventure deck, but to use those adventure cards in their native decks, and finding that balance of support between new and old seems very difficult for them. Because, like, I was looking at all of the Seekers cards, and I was trying to put together the Seekers deck, and the Seekers deck itself is awful. It's legitimately terrible. But the individual cards for their decks are good. Like, it actually makes Lucamon better, and it actually makes Pulsemon better. But as a combined deck, it's terrible. Same thing with Chronicles. Chronicles, like, you're better off just taking the best Chronicles cards and just shoving that into the existing Alphamon deck we already have. And it just makes Alphamon better. Like, I feel like they don't exactly understand how that works, and I get, like, the designers are trying their best to figure that out. But like that's just a bit of a difference in terms of like overall design, in terms of card quality, that allows not only just interesting and varied deck building, but what they're supporting, because we already know Seekers as a trait is not really going to get very much support. So it's just like same thing with Excel. So it's like we get this new exclusive trait that the cards want to play with that new exclusive trait, but then they're just going to drop that support and then walk away and then leave us high and dry with it. So, like, it doesn't give us lots of confidence to invest in those types of cards and decks when that's the end result. So, yeah, I think, like, Pokemon Pocket is an interesting game. And I hope that their design continues, and I hope other games can learn what Pokemon Pocket's doing in terms of their game design and strive to make their game better, because through Pokemon Pocket, I kind of, like, sorry if I'm just blabbing a lot. I just, there was a lot on my mind with this topic, but, like, Pokemon Pocket has taught me how boring Digimon is. At least, like, I feel burnt out and bored with Digimon, because kind of like what I said before, if I'm just playing the same deck over and over again and nothing's really changing and nothing's really getting interesting and there's no incentive for me to buy and invest in new decks when they're bad, like what am I doing then? I'm just in a perpetual limbo state waiting for a change that's never going to be coming. Or if it does come, like I hope it's impactful enough. So like they just spoiler wise revealed a couple of red hybrids cards, and I'm like, that makes red hybrids real good. Oh, red hybrids is already good. So I guess I'm just gonna continue to play red hybrids for the second, third year in a row. It's like, yeah, that's really making me want to invest in a new set.
Yeah, because I know like with me the shoot, what was I gonna say? Because I mean I kind of like the very first set and everything. Like one of the first decks I built was the Articuno deck because I just so happened to pull the cards for it and everything. It wasn't a bad deck, and there were I will say like like to me like the very first meta of the Pokemon, it was like you either play Mewtwo or you play the Articuno just because those were the best what's the word I'm looking for here, energy abusers, so to say. Like the Articuno having the Misty card and the um and
Mewtwo having Gardevoir.
yeah, Mewtwo having Gardevoir. Yep, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't think what it was for a second. But it was just like to me it's like, and then like the next set, the Mythical Islands. I mean, I kind of started picking up Celebi because one, Celebi's my favorite mythical Pokemon, and two, it kind of didn't help that Celebi also had its own abusable energy with its superior. I think that's what that one's called. But um, yeah, it's to me, it's just like there's the past few things have been like a little bit more of the abusive of the energy and everything, but this later set now I've kind of been focusing on like this dark type deck and everything with Darkrai, Coughing, and Eggings trying to do like chip damage at my opponent and like kind of force them to like, no, you're gonna stay here, you can't retreat, you're not escaping this kind of thing.
Well, even then, so like the big dynamic difference is like, yes, Pokemon does have some slight imbalance when it comes to first energy priority, but that's a really easy thing to solve, and they've kind of already been working to solve that with good low efficiency aggressive cards. So like Executor, Skarmory, those are cards that love going first. Well, I guess stage ones that have a one energy attack are like the a prime example of like cards that seem like they just want to go first because you get first evolution advantage. Like that's the trade-off between going first versus second in that game more specifically is one, if you go second you get first energy, and if you go first you get first evolution. So that dynamic on top of the Cyrus card in the latest expansion allowed for aggressive strategies to want to do chip damage. Like that's the big dynamic, and like that's something that Digimon kind of just right now sorely lacks is the interest and intrigue for various different strategies to be explored. Because going to the main topic at hand, one of the big observations that I found out is decks basically have 3 win conditions. You could extend this to level 6 Digimon more specifically, but like decks have 3 win conditions. The first one is OTK the opponent. So taking away all agency away from the opponent and killing them in one shot through some intricate combo or high levels of damage. The second thing I noticed is having insane protection. So I can play out my big thing. It's not going to win me the game on the spot, but if you can't get rid of it, which you reasonably shouldn't because it has some good enough protection to stick around long enough to eventually just win the game because you can't interact with it in a meaningful way. And then the third observation is floodgates. So whether it's a level 6 or a couple of level 3s on the field that just stop the opponent from advancing their overall game state in a meaningful way, shutting the opponent down and making sure that they basically can't play the game, That's basically the third thing a lot of decks are doing at this point. Like, let me pull up. Probably should have had this prepared. But I'm gonna pull up like Eggman events just to look at like meta decks. So Gallantmon, not a floodgate, high damage, high protection. Uh, Purple hybrids has a floodgate, doesn't have high damage, but it has high protection because you can't interact with tamers in a meaningful way. And then it does this like loopy combo to just recursively deal damage every single turn. So it's constant pressure that you can't deal with. That's basically the same thing as protection. Red hybrids. It has high damage and high protection. They also can incidentally run floodgates, but most of the time they're not running the rookies to do that. But like a lot of the good decks seem to have at least two or three of these, or like bare minimum one of these things, one of these three levels of win condition. But the good decks seem to have two of them. You look at Mirage. Um, it's an OTK deck that also has floodgates. So it's like, cool, if I can't kill you, I'm going to make sure you can't play the game and then kill you the following turn. Takami Kazuchi. This is probably one of the biggest exceptions where it's like just doubling down on the OTK because it doesn't have protection and it doesn't have any floodgates. But that's why its success has been probably limited. Dynomon has been finding success because, again, it's essentially a floodgate and it has insane protection. So you can't reasonably get rid of it in a meaningful way, especially if they use Metal Tyrannomon. You definitely won't be able to get rid of it in a meaningful way. And then it just comes back if you do. And then just kills your board. And then because it also has high levels of damage, it's not OTKing, but it's still dealing a lot of damage, which is putting a lot of pressure on the opponent. Dominimon. Floodgate with aces. And so it's stopping and limiting the opponent from attacking or dealing damage in a meaningful way. And then, again, insane protection. So, like, I could keep going down the list of, like, meta decks, but you're seeing this very common trend where those three aspects of the game are being highlighted and, like, and exacerbated the most. And, like, this is also part of, like, why scrambles and training cards are slightly unhealthy for the game. After playing Pokemon Pocket, I'm more accepting of them because a card like Professor's Research, which is just a pot of greed, it draws two cards. But like the big difference between those and like Pokemon staples and Digimon staples, at least for Pocket's sake, I'm not an expert on the main game at all, is the fact that the game was designed around that. So it's just like you had Professor Oak at the beginning, whereas we didn't have the scrambles and we didn't have the training cards right off at the beginning. And you could see with some of their card designs, they were just like, oops, I guess that was a mistake that we're just going to roll with. So cards like BT 14 Goblimon, being able to get a free memory after you Evo for free off of your rookie because of the training card, like that was probably something they didn't actually acknowledge or think about. I think like Memory Boost is a little bit more forgiving because it has a higher initial cost of investment, but I digress. It just goes to show that like those three factors to what makes a Digimon deck successful, and the fact that you need at least a bare minimum one of them in order to have a competitively viable deck is a very big deal. So I don't know if you've came to any of those conclusions at all, um, but that's just like my rational like thought process on it.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, it's kind of been like, I mean, we could take a look at like even just like some of those, like you said, like if you look at every single top deck and everything, it has some way to do one of those three things that you said. I think the only thing that really that wasn't mentioned was the whole mill strategy that's only just now recently been able to kind of kick in, I guess you could say, or uh, sorry, not trying to really started becoming meta and everything from the purple hybrids. So it's the way I see it is that I'm trying to think how I want to say this. I mean, with the fact that we're now going to be getting like BT20 and everything. I mean, power. I don't want to say power creep is like it was bound to happen or anything, but this is just kind of one of those things where it's like it doesn't necessarily surprise me too much, I guess. But at the
No,
same time,
I don't think
but at
it's
the same time,
surprising.
but like at the same time, like the writing was kind of on the wall too back in BT11 with Mirage. Like Mirage is still stupid good because of the two things it's able to do, which is OTK, but that's based on the engine it's using. But the other powerful thing it really was doing early on that I don't think anybody realized just how powerful it quite was the whole floodgate of, hey, you just drew a card, then I get to do X on your turn and everything. And it's not like the level 3 floodgates are that bad or anything. It's just they're not as important. I
Oh
want to
no,
say they're not
they're
as important.
trust me,
They're
they're
important.
important.
It's just there's easier ways to remove them versus removing a level 6 floodgate. Is what I want. It's what I meant to say. My bad.
No, that's 100% correct because at nationals I played against at least two Galaxy Loop decks, like the Galaxy Mirage or Galaxy Toolbox, whatever you want to call it. And that deck doesn't have room for floodgates. Guess what Mirage had room for? Floodgates. So every single time I saw a floodgate, I won that game because they couldn't meaningfully remove the floodgate to not anti-tempo themselves. Like the only way that they remove the floodgate is with at best and at earliest a level 5, but by that point I already stopped the majority of their combo, so they're not playing very efficiently, which gives me the opportunity to clap them back. Which is why floodgates are like insanely important. We've seen this time and time again where floodgates are like becoming even more important because you look at the finals of the North American Nationals and literally the Momon Donkey Nog, he lost to 7 Great Demon Lords because he didn't have his floodgates. Like it is kind of, there's more complexity to that, but that was a huge factor. Like the match that he won was because he kept his floodgate out and he kept recurring it over and over again, and it just made it very difficult for Demon Lords to actually play the game. And you can kind of see this type of sentiment throughout the entire game where it's just like, oh, I've beaten Imperial on Mirage because I had floodgates where they can't gain memory. So they do their big DNA play and they can't maintain turn because they're not gaining the memory back. And because the decks are already operating on such a tighter memory curve, like they rely on those types of cards in order to maintain tempo. And now these floodgates are disrupting that tempo, which is like both a good and a bad thing, because on one end it's like, okay, good, there's actually a counter to these degenerate strategies. But on the other end, it's just like I'm forced to run these cards because of how degenerate these strategies are in order to slow them down to make the game back to a normal level. So that way they're not just hyper reliant on, oh, here's my back row of delayed options, which again, we have very little counterplay for. Which is something Pocket does absolutely well, is like high levels of counterplay. But I digress. Enough gushing about how good Pocket's design is. Like, there's still a lot of growing pains that Digimon needs to jump through and realize in order to actually, in my perspective, get into a better state. Because, like, I honestly think we do need kind of like a boss's order or a Cyrus or Sabrina type card where it's like force the back row out or attack the back row in some way, shape, or form. And I get like, oh, but that's against the rules of the breeding area. But that's also kind of why I liked Examon, and I found Examon to be kind of interesting as a deck because it plays around with the idea of it's impacting how the raising or breeding area works. Because they can't just blindly move it out, because if that's the only Digimon on their field and they move it out, then boom, they are under Eximon's ability to force that Digimon to attack. So, like, we need more interesting counterplay than just say, here's a floodgate for that. Or here's an ace for that. I think, like, it's gotten to the point where it just feels like lazy design at this point.
Yeah, because I mean, there is like some decks that like I think I've mentioned it before too. Like you take a look at what the Liberators like just the manga's been doing and all the Liberator themed cards have been doing. Like they seem really fun of what they want to do. They're unique gameplays and everything. They're very relatively fair decks. Like if it literally was just Liberator decks out there, honestly, I think Liberators like it would be like the most diverse we've ever seen. Probably even more diverse than BT15. Maybe by a that might be an extreme shot I'm saying there, but that's just how I feel about it. And it's just the big problem is they can't like there's not enough of that power. There's not enough of that driving force to make the cards abused like they are. I think the only cards that we've seen be really abused from Liberators has been the Shoto from EX7 and the Medieval Gallimon from this new EX8.
Hey, guess what both of those cards are? They're floodgates.
Yeah,
Shoto paired up with anything makes anything a blocker, which essentially is like, yes, blockers aren't really floodgates, but it's kind of acting like a pseudo floodgate, especially paired up with Mother. But Medieval Gallimon 100% is a floodgate. That card is like, hey, you basically can't play Digimon by effects, otherwise I'm going to trigger and kill your thing before you're able to do what you need to do. Or mid doing what you're doing, and then I'm going to disrupt you. Like, that, it's a very relevant card because of just the type of floodgate that it is, and the fact that every single deck can run it because all it requires is 2 Digimon on the field to make it a 7-drop, and it wipes the board, is absolutely nuts. Like, the big thing, like, I always kind of say it's like the pseudo Death X. Like, it's covering the same type of design space as what Death X was trying to do, except Death X wasn't a floodgate. Death X was annoying. It wasn't a floodgate, though. Medieval Gallimon more is in that floodgatey territory, and now you have an instant floodgate that wipes the field, and then because the field is wiped, it's now harder to respond to. Like, it single-handedly wins games because of just how oppressive that card is, limiting what's even able to be played. And I think, like, that's part of the big problem is, like, a lot of these, like, floodgates and top decks and, like, just the high levels of uninteractive gameplay that Digimon has exerted really puts it in a bad position.
Hello?
Yeah, I think I blipped out.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But yeah, so I was saying that, like, Medieval Gallimon and cards like him, high-level floodgates, just make it a lot more difficult for various other decks and strategies to exist, which is why, like, if anyone wants to, like, bring it down to a more casual level, when it comes to the family decks, Deep Savers, according to Japanese data, is the only one of the 3 families that has any semblance of success, and that's literally because Aegis-Dramon is a floodgate. Like, it's going to show how important floodgate style of effects and protection is to the game at this point. Like, we're not quite at, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Buddy Fight levels of stupid yet, and I really hope that we don't get there. But like you said, I think, like, if they take a step back, curve some of the top decks, I think the game can be in one of the best states it's ever been, because I think the Liberator cards are, for the most part, outside of, like, Dynamon is, like, the only outlier because of how incredibly powerful that card is at being a floodgate. But, like, I think that a lot of the Liberator stuff is very well and competently designed. So it gives me faith that they can do it. It's just, when they do, it hasn't mattered because of where the state of the game is. And right now, it feels like they're just trying to play with cute things. And we're going to be getting a lot of legacy support for a lot of stuff. And Even though they want us to play like new things with the legacy support, we're just gonna have it actually just be legacy support rather than play the new thing.
Yeah, because I think one of the things you mentioned earlier was the whole Seekers deck and everything. Like, it doesn't really seem that good. The only good thing that I've heard players talk about coming from the Seekers deck is the Searcher Lucamon. That's the only good thing, and also maybe the new Kazuchimon,
Oh, the new
because it's
Kazuchimon's
relatively a little
so
bit.
good. That
Yeah, so it's
card's
like,
nasty.
well, like, one, you can actually Evo into that Kasuchi, but it's also got a really stupid good inheritable effect for you. So, I mean, to me, it's just like those are the only two cards you're going to probably end up using, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, so there's argument to at least like attempt to use the level 4, so that way you could try to like customize your level 4s past Darugamon, because I think like I've been caught in situations where Darugamon is actually not super great because I'm trying to use what's its face? Skull Belushi. So like I need the dark animal, and like it sure works with Dexteruga, but I'm running less of him than the Daruga, and I need to be in that. So like it does line up some awkward stuff. So at least like the level 4 opens up for more possible level 4 combinations. So that's I would say that's a net positive. But yeah, like Excel is kind of just mediocre at best. It doesn't really feel like it. Like half the line is good, half the line is bad. The good stuff's the Leomon stuff, but because of the Excel trait, Leomon can't even use those cards effectively because it's trying to be trait locked. So like it just that's kind of where some of these like current designs are at, where it just feels extra cumbered because they're trying to be their own unique thing while still being legacy support, but the legacy support isn't good. Either that or the complete opposite, where the trait is bad and the legacy support is good. Like, there's no middle ground to where the deck actually could exist the way it intends it to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all mentioned it before, and there's a lot of players that probably feel about it. Like, we are just one ban, like one good ban and restriction list away from probably having a lot of a better format and everything.
Yeah, because like I'm not trying to be super negative, and I don't want to continuously be super negative. I just want to enjoy the game. And after kind of like not really taking a break, but after experiencing greener pastures, like I do have a deeper appreciation for the good designed stuff in Digimon, but at the same time, it's making me as a player acknowledge that I am burnt out. I am bored and I am burnt out, and like at this point I'm just waiting for a change, and that change doesn't necessarily mean a new set, because as we saw with EX8, like Purple Hybrids is still the best deck, like by actually a large and growing margin. It's been winning more than Mirage, incidentally. So like, and we've been playing with that for at least 4 or 5 months now, at least. So it's the game is boring. Like that's I mean, I'm getting bored with it. Obviously, I'm trying to play other stuff, but again, trying to play casual with the game in such a high power state is like not necessarily the greatest idea, because then you just get trounced and then you feel even worse. So like I think the big thing is I'm just looking for a change. And I'm really hoping that in 2025 we get the meaningful enough change to where the game feels fresh again. Like fresher. At least that's
Yeah,
just my rationale behind it, cuz like I'm really trying not to be negative. Like that I guess that's like my pseudo goal. I'm a realist. I say it how it is and I call it out for what it is. And I get that people don't like that, and I get that that's a big turnoff especially for newer players, but like I'm just trying to be real. Like that's all I've ever done. Been honest and been real. So, but yeah, floodgates are becoming more problematic and more prominent, at least like in my perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it's a because I'm kind of like the same way and everything of how I feel about that.
Yeah, and like I always struggle with putting my words into perspective for others to understand, and most of the time I screw up. To where it has the opposite effect. It's like, no, 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 that's not exactly what I meant. But yeah, like I think like once we get past those three things, basically making or breaking if a deck is competitive, then the game can be very fun and very rewarding. Because at locals, some players were playing Scottymon, and it's just like Scottymon's not really a floodgate outside of Hexablau, um, but like it's a fun card, and they were just having fun, and then along comes the meta, and then it just curb stomps them, and they're just like, oh well, that was a thing, I guess. And I feel bad when that happens because they were having fun and then they encountered meta and then now they're not having fun. And that's not the feeling I want players to have. I want players to have fun.
Yeah, because I mean, the point of a card game is to have fun. I mean, obviously you could look at it as, oh, well, it's also collecting, it's also competitive, but everyone's just trying to have a good time, regardless what you do. Because I
Right.
mean,
And that's why
you could,
interaction is
because like,
important.
yeah, because like when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh and everything, like I did not have fun playing Yu-Gi-Oh when I had to sit there and watch my opponent. But there was like a lot of times where I've lost in Digimon where it's like, oh man, I lost. Hey, that was still a good game. I still had a good time.
Yeah, I don't know how Japan is able to play their best of ones because, like, I was watching the Japanese finals and literally the Purple Hybrids player got double Hexablowed out of the game, and the game took longer because Imperial wasn't exactly set up, and his Floodgate was good enough to stop the opponent from literally doing anything. Granted, there was play lines to try to get out of the Floodgate. They weren't great play lines, but they were at least play lines. And the purple hybrid player just didn't choose to do any of them, which I found was interesting in of itself. But again, it just goes to show, like, was that purple hybrid player really having a fun time playing the game? I mean, granted, it's a purple hybrid player, so they should have a fun time. But jokes aside, like, if that purple hybrid player was able to play the game, like, I think their enjoyment, like, I get it. It's like somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. Not everyone can have a good time because of that. But, like, I guess the thing is the importance on the decision making increases the amount of fun that we could be have. And because of the high levels of uninteractivity that the game is currently plagued with, like, it really dramatically drops the amount of actual, like, reasonable play lines that we're able to do, which then hampers our fun, win or lose. Because, like, if I can't have an interesting game, then, like, what's the point of why we even shuffled up to begin with? If, like, oh, you played a floodgate or you played a card with high levels of protection and I just can't do anything about it, like, what fun is that?
Yeah, because I mean, because like then you just end up getting into the Yu-Gi-Oh territory, and I kind of left Yu-Gi-Oh because of the fact that there was no fun, like there was no interaction.
Yeah, like there is interaction, but there's not interaction. It's a weird conundrum. Um, but yeah, so speaking of the new player experience, we kind of just shifting topics because we're getting to the end of the podcast. We did get some spoilers from the new set and the starter decks, and I'm gonna say this right now. I hate mandatory secret rares off of a starter deck. So I'm gonna put that out there before we actually get into the spoiler territory because I'm gonna load up some of the spoilers. We got a decent amount of cards spoiled, a good amount of reprints. Some of the reprints are really good. Um, so let's just get up into it. So we already talked about Shadramon. So that was the last reprint that we got. That is in the event pack. Uh, continuing with the theme of reprints and event packs, Rivals Barrage is getting a event pack reprint, which I just bought my 4 copies of. Um, so yeah, that was this is definitely a good reprint. Um, it's unfortunate that it's attached to the special event pack, but I guess that just again having good reprints as promos drives people to want to play in the event for those cards. So I 100% understand the logic of it. The Scrambles are getting reprinted in the starter decks. We already knew that. Koromon's getting a reprint, the BT14 one. Basically, the only red egg people are playing on a generic level. If you're not a deck that needs a specific egg, you're playing Koromon. So good reprint there. Gallantmon from BT13's getting a reprint as part of the BT20 box toppers. So fantastic card, very meta relevant right now, with Gallantmon being super big, and Purple Hybrids being super big because this is usually a tech one of in both of those decks. It's not like a mandatory card, but like it's a very good tech card when it comes up. More Scrambles. BT14 Patamon, a staple for any yellow vaccine style deck, getting a reprint. Very good card. You're kind of seeing this trend where they're actually having good reprints, which is shocking because I'm not used to like all of these good reprints. Like Anguamon also getting another reprint as part of the box topper. Patamon is also part of the box topper. And then like I'm excited for the Anguamon because that like Anguamon has been holding me back from wanting to invest into yellow because of how expensive the card got. But if I'm able to pull enough of these, I would consider playing yellow. Another really good reprint is Imperial Paladin Mode Ace. That's getting a reprint. The BT17 one. That's getting a reprint as a participation prize for BT20's pre-release event. That's crazy. Like, that's Pulsemon level good.
Yeah,
in terms
Imperial
of a reprint.
Paladin Mode Ace is like just a really good card to have for any kind of blue and green decks. But I do think the art is like really good too at the same time. Now, probably the winter pack will have the foil version because we kind of saw something similar with BT13 Alphamon.
Yeah, it says it's holographic textured foil. But at least like you get a base art, like a not foil version just for participating, and this card is still very meta relevant. So like that's an example of a very good reprint. Like Bandai has actually been very on top of their reprint game, and it makes me very happy. They already made the announcement for the analog youth getting a reprint, another fantastic staple. This is one that really didn't need a reprint. It was the promo Maildramon. It's a good card. I don't think it needed a reprint. Same thing with the promo not Mirage. Magna Garurumon. Like, good card, but didn't need a reprint. And then we get into some of the spoiler territory. So we already knew about the Gachumon, and we already knew about the Hero. Interesting to note that Heroes are rare, where a lot of the other protagonists are super rares. So, but Hero, like, this is his first foray into the card game. So I'm sure he's definitely going to be getting more support later on, which is going to make me very excited because I'm curious to see how effective this style of deck is.
Yeah. I mean, because we really don't have much revealed still, even with the Tamer, about how the whole game mechanic of that is even going to work out to be as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool that we're getting spoilers. Like, I feel like it's kind of early to get BT21 spoilers, considering we're not getting the set till, like, what, April?
April, give or take. And the other thing I think is a little interesting, too, is they somewhat started revealing cards for the starter deck, but they are doing more on the base set itself. I always thought the starter deck was coming out. The starter deck would get the reveals first, then the actual set.
Yeah,
but
they're kind of doing. Opinion. Yeah, they're mixing and matching, which I think is like fine because the starter decks are supposed to play with BT21, which is why I hate Ty. I hate him so much because Having, again, important secret rares to the starter deck is something that Bandai has been on a very bad trend with, because that alienates the people who bought the starter deck because now they need this card. Granted, from a psychological standpoint, yes, now they want to buy the booster boxes in order to get the card for them, so it's trying to drive attention to the booster boxes, but it doesn't need to be a secret rare. Come on, Bandai, let alone a staple card like what Ty's doing. So, for anyone who's an audio listener, Ty is an adventure traded hero tamer. So, those are two traits that are going to be seeing a lot of play going forward. He is going to be a white 4-cost memory setting tamer, where when any of your Digimon attacks, you get to suspend them and draw a card. Just any deck can already use that. That's already a very good ability. And then he has the added benefit where during your main phase, once per turn, you get to play an adventure or hero traded card, not just Digimon, card, with a play cost of 2 or less from your hand, and play it for free. Um, and then for each of your tamer's colors, so the more tamers of different colors that you have on your field, you get to add 1 to the maximum effect, or maximum range this effect is able to do. So if you have one tamer out, oh no, so he would count himself. So basically, off of himself, he could play a 3 cost. With an additional tamer, he could play potentially a 4 or a 5 cost. So the more tamers you have, the better this effect becomes. But the catch is you have to return this to the bottom of your deck, which is whatever, because you're replacing it with a big body or a suitable replacement. So this is one of the secret rares in BT20. Obviously trying to play with the adventure deck, being adventure trait, but the hero trait means that he's also trying to be in a hero deck, which I don't exactly know what that's going to look like. But we do see the hero trait on a lot of other tamers from the protagonists.
Yeah, because like practically every single protagonist so far has had that hero trait. I don't think the hero trait is on the starter decks either. So it's like really interesting to me. Like if they're are they actually trying to make like a protagonist deck? Because a lot of them, for the most part, like besides the secret rare tie, you have like the Davis who's red. You have the Gotcha Tamer guy. He's red. Takato, he's red. The Takuya from the Frontier guy, that's also red. So it's like kind of just really got me wondering. They seriously about to just make a protagonist red deck? Like it seems possible to do.
Yeah, because Marcus most likely is going to be red yellow, because kind of like what you were saying, you had Davis, which is red blue. You have Takato, which is red purple. Hero and Takuya are both mono red, and we already know that Shine has been playing in yellow, so there's zero reason to think that he's not going to be red yellow. I think that what's his face? God, Shoutmon's tamer. That's probably going to either be another mono red or maybe like a red green. I could see him like dipping into green because of like Ballistamon, or he could even be a tricolor for all I know. Red, green, yellow, like who knows? Um, so like they're definitely trying to form something with this hero trait. I don't know how much that's going to stick because it's not on all. Well, it is actually on the protagonist Digimon. At least some of them. So, like, you have the Vmon that was revealed that also has the hero trait. So, like, it does seem like they are trying to build, like, this hero archetype. Which I think is interesting. Because, like, the more archetypes a deck is able to play with, the more playable the card is going to become. Because not only is this playing in Adventure, trying to upgrade the starter decks, but be its own thing with Hero as well. So there's two potential deck styles that it could go into. Again, one of them is obviously going to be better than the other, and that's where the card is most likely going to end up going, as we've seen with the BT20 designs and some of the early results from BT20. But yeah. So I guess moving on with the spoilers, one of the cards that can be played off of the tie is going to be the BT21 Metal Greymon, which this card is kind of nuts in of itself. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it has both an on play and when digivolving, so kind of playing into the whole uh the secret rare type, but even what the starter decks might even be doing too. Um, but it's practically sorry, it's a little blurred for me for some reason. I don't know why. It says on play when digivolving. Well, first it also has the Digivolution text box of level 4 with Greymon in name or with the adventure trait for a cost of 3.
Yeah,
So
so it
kind of
stretches to other Digimon in other colors.
now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Burning Greymon is not counted as a Greymon.
Correct. So,
Yeah,
because the original Japanese name for it was Vitramon. So, the card is basically counted as Vitramon, which is why it's not counted as a Greymon. But they just didn't name the card Vitramon because Burning Greymon is just ingrained in the dub.
yeah. So this one you probably wouldn't be able to use on top of like the whole heroes thing. But either way, it has a really weird wording here. To one of your opponent's Digimon, Digivolve one for every two of your tamer's colors.
Yeah,
So
so it's
like
looking
you practically target one and you Digivolve one for every color you tamer you have. Which if you were thinking about the starter deck, because I know the tie-in Izzy is like a black and green. There's the Sora and Kari that's red yellow. So already that's 4 colors right there. You could Digivolve 4 with this guy right there. And
yeah, like just a little bit of tamer setup and the Digivolve is like borderline insane. And then you could even, because it's an on play, it also synergizes with the secret rare tie, where it's just like, yeah, I'm going to activate main, tuck the tie, play out the Metal Greymon D Digivolve 4, or it would be like potentially more. It just depends on the setup.
yeah, it also has a your turn once per turn when when one or when your other Digimon are played or Digivolve. If any of them have the adventure trait, one of your Digimon gains alliance for the turn. Then one of your Digimon may attack, and then Metal Greymon also has the inheritable of alliance. Kind of interesting that the fact this guy has alliance, because normally that's kind of like a green kind of effect, ain't it? Like I mean,
Um,
we've seen the obviously Lugamon using alliance as well.
yeah, Lord Nightmon also used Alliance,
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
yeah, so like Alliance isn't exactly exclusively a green mechanic. They kind of stopped with more color-based mechanics for the most part, and just are using it when they feel like it's appropriate. But again, this is another card that feels like it screams like it wants to be played with that tie because you use the tie, play out a Digimon, and then his ability procs to be able to give your Digimon alliance and then be able to attack. And then if he was Digivolved, then he also gains extra instances of alliance, which is kind of nuts. I like the fact that like now Machine Dramon has more access to alliance, just as some incidental support, but that's again something Bandai's probably not even aware of or thinking about. But the fact that this card has this much text and it does this much for an uncommon kind of is telling me the power level of the set is going to be on the higher side. Because if all of the tamers are for the most part going to take up a lot of the secret rare slots, then that like we still need to have powerful and impactful Digimon, so like rares are basically going to be the equivalent of super rares, and uncommons like this are already on the power level of already some super rares or even some rares. Granted, the rarity has not really mattered that much in Digimon. We've seen some like baller commons before. Um, but yeah, like it kind of just is telling me that this is going to be a very high powered set, and there's going to be a lot of cross synergies between what it's trying to do, because obviously it wants to be played with adventures, but you could still build a hero deck using this card because some of the heroes might have the adventure trait. I don't know. Good card. But going to the starter decks, it looks like Agumon is going to make another color shift into black this time, And we have a rare starter deck Agumon, where it can digivolve off of red or black. Stats don't really matter. It's just a 1K rookie. Can digivolve on top of a hero or adventure traded level 2. So, again, it kind of screams like it's going to try to set up for both of those decks. It is also a adventure and a hero traded Digimon on top of it being a reptile. Comes with the inheritable of reboot, not anything too special there. And it's a warper. So while the opponent has a Digimon with 10,000 or more DP, or you have a tamer with three or more or your tamers have three or more total colors, which is good because it gives you a proactive way of doing it, which is why the old warpers, if you're not able to warp proactively, because most of them they're reactive, this just allows you to be able to do your stuff agnostic of the opponent, which is usually for the better, and that's how you could like tell cards are getting stronger. Because a lot of our warp effects before needed the opponent to have something, but this could digivolve into a War Greymon for 4, which is strong, very strong. Instant megas, good. um, we've seen it before where warping can be good. Right now, warping hasn't been super relevant because we're just hiding in back, building up our stack, and then we're gonna have like a super combo. But like this combined with some other stuff can make for a very powerful card. It just depends on what else is the card going to be combined with and what the War Greymon is doing. Then we got another reprint. This is going to be one of the LM reprints, so one of the box topper reprints, I think. And it is the starter deck 17 Magnamon. Another very meta relevant card. Not as expensive as some of the other promos or some of the other reprints that we've seen, but definitely a welcome card to see nonetheless. Then we got Vmon. So this is going back to BT21. So we have a new Vmon.
Yeah, like I said, they kind of been flip flopping between the starter decks and the main set, so it's just kind of been throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah. But Vmon here, Evos for 1 on top of normal red or blue Digimon, so keep that in mind. So if you're using it in a Vmon deck, you have to have Demi Vmon because he does Digivolve for 0 on top of Demi Vmon or hero traded level 2s. And then he has an ability that basically allows him to reduce the cost of what he's digivolving into as long as it's a armor form or hero traded card. So very good. We've seen that on a lot of like Liberator cards like Penguinmon and whatnot, where it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna make my Digivolution cheaper. I really actually kind of like these because it de-incentivizes the usage of those early trainings. I mean, granted, you're just going to use the training later, but still, like, it de-incentivizes the usage of them, um, because this ability conflicts with those abilities. But I guess if the level 4 is more expensive, then it doesn't matter because then they would stack. And then the inheritable is not really anything special, just plus 2,000 DP, similar to a lot of the other red Vmon cards. Then we get Davis. If you want to take Davis.
Yeah, so this is going to be one of the things I mentioned earlier. Davis is both blue and red, so there could theoretically be potential to use this with the Virus Imperial since there's now a red one. But if your opponent has a Digimon, you gain 1 memory at the start of the turn. Then its main effect is by suspending this tamer and trashing the top stack card of your armor form trade Digimon, you could draw 1 card and gain a memory. So kind of works with the whole theoretical armor thing, what you want to do, because you want to put your level 4 armors in the trash, so that way when you Evo into the 1, you could use its effect to Evo 1 from the trash. So it theoretically could work with that.
Yeah, it's a very solid card. Davis doesn't really have a lot of like good support for armor forms, so it's definitely nice to see that he's getting some support for armor forms. And like de-digivolving your armor forms essentially yourself isn't necessarily that bad. We've kind of already seen, like with the Galaxy engine, like, oh yeah, going backwards to be able to go forward for potentially less just seems like a very good strategy. And the fact that this is just giving you a memory and giving you a card draw is kind of nuts. And like, if you are in the wrong armor, this can help you put yourself into the correct armor. So it's just a very good and versatile card overall. It's interesting that it doesn't really work with any hero cards. So that's something we have to take into account. It's just armor form. So I don't know what they're doing with the hero trait as of right now. I haven't seen the card outside of Ty that's putting any of this stuff together.
Yeah, because I know, like with the Magnamon armor himself, what if you look at the BTA one, depending on the number of your armors in trash would determine how much DP he gains and everything. So this one kind of works with that one in a sense for that.
Yeah, it's just it's a good card for armor form decks, which they kind of they needed, but they didn't need. Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he's implemented actually.
Hmm.
And then again, barring any bans and restrictions, like that's definitely going to have an impact on the card's overall playability. Because if, like, let's just say Davis and Ken gets hit, then Armor Forms would want to lean more towards this Davis because it's a Davis that actually would reward them in a good, meaningful way potentially.
Yeah, because like I'm even just looking at this Vmon and that the Davis alone from this, and I'm already thinking like, would it actually be smarter to switch to a red base in armor form for Virus Imperial? Because those two effects kind of seem to work very well with each other, I guess,
No,
in my
because
opinion.
because
It,
the Virus Imperial is more Wormmon focused than Vmon focused because the most important rookie is the BT16 Wormmon because that's the card that just lets you pop off.
yeah,
Like
true.
between that and the promo Shadramon, like those two cards in combination literally make the entire deck function.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a pretty tough sell. It's possible. I'm not saying it's not. But it's a tough sell. But speaking of not so tough sells and possibilities, we have flipping back to starter deck 21, the Gabumon, which is the exact same thing as Agumon. He's not in his primary color, he's in his secondary color. So Gabumon is purple. The inheritable is the classic when attacking, draw one, discard one. Always good, not never really bad. Note that this card doesn't have the hero trait, but it still has the adventure trait and can digivolve off of adventures on top of blue or purple and has the same warp ability just with Metal Garurumon. So, good card. We have a reprint for the LM5, which is going to be the EX2 Guilmon. So, that's cool. That again a very meta relevant card because I think this is Guilmon's only searcher, like rookie searcher.
Uh,
I think it is.
I think there's another one from BT12 that allows you to reveal a tie and everything. I can't remember for sure though. But I feel like
Uh,
there was another searcher in BT12.
I don't think there was. Hold on, I can fact check. Where is? Here we go. Guilmon, Guilmon, Guilmon bread. Uh, BT17 just deletes a Digimon when you play Calamon or Takato. Then you have Searcher for EX2, Rusher for EX4. You have Warper from starter deck. You have Draw 1 when attacking from promo. What else do we got? Those are Guilmon X's. They don't count as real Guilmons. That's BT17 still. Where's BT12? BT12 is. Oh yeah, BT12 is a searcher. It's just looking for Takato though. Add all
Uh,
cards with Takato. Like it just revealed top four. Add all Takatos from your hand and place the rest. So it's arguably a worse searcher because this one's looking for Takatos, Growlmons, and Gallantmons. So good they picked the good searcher and not the bad searcher. Then we got BT21 Growlmon, which is not a hero card. So one thing to take into account, where it's just a classic Growlmon, has a high Digivolution cost, but you don't care because it's cheaper on Guilmons. Then on play, when Digivolving, delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 4k DP or less. And if it didn't delete anything, mill 2 cards from your deck, not from both players' decks, just your deck. So they're trying to. This is the one thing I hate about Gallantmon is they constantly change what the heck he's doing, and this is fitting more in theme with like the mill side of it. Like, but we already are learning that the mill side is like completely irrelevant at this point, and we just want to get into Gallantmon X. So this card's really not doing much of anything. You probably won't see a lot of play. And the inheritable ability is not helping it with just an on delete gain of memory, which is like fine. It's not bad. It's fine. This actually might go into what's its face? Um, Dark Dragons with heavy metal. Like this feels like a
yeah,
heavy metal card.
yeah, it could. Because I mean, it is red and purple, so that's the 2 colors it wants to work with.
Yeah, and it also has the on play effect to do that. So, and heavy metal doesn't have that great of ways of filling up its trash. Like, it wants to discard cards, obviously, but after a certain point, you don't want to discard too many cards because then you don't have any to play with. So, yeah, maybe this is just better for heavy metal because it just feels better. Then we got Takato, which is another super rare from BT21. It is a hero traded card, so take it away, Jay Stewart.
Yeah, so start a main phase. Hold on a sec here. Don't know why it keeps being blurred. Yeah, start a main phase. If your opponent has a Digimon, you gain a memory. All turns, when any of your Digimon are played or Digivolved by suspending this tamer, tell your opponent's turn ends, one of your Digimon with Guilmon, Growlmon, Gallantmon, or Megidramon in its name, or the hero trait. So this is where the heroes things comes in now. Gains blocker, and if there are 10 or more total cards in both players' trash, gain this Digimon gets 2000 DP, and then it's a 3 cost, purple, red, Staccato. So,
Yeah, this because it's interacting at least with hero cards, I feel like this has more room to be played with than the Davis because the Davis literally isn't helping heroes outside of literally just being a hero traded card. Maybe we're just reading too much into the hero trait and it doesn't really mean anything, but it feels like they still, like based on some of these cards, it feels like they just want a hero deck to exist. Like just run all of the protagonist cards in a amalgamation of something.
yeah. I mean, the other thing I think is also really kind of funny is we finally now have a purple Staccato, so it's like, I highly doubt it. Like, but it'd be nice because one of the decks I love from BT5 was the Chaos Gallimon deck. So it's like nice to finally have a Staccato I could actually theoretically use now, if I just wanted to have some fun deck to play at locals.
Yeah, I mean, Chaos Gallantmon is definitely some unexplored territory. I would say, like, there's a lot of good cards in Guilmon for purple to be able to make a Chaos work. It's just, is it going to be more effective than normal Gallant? Probably not. Are you going to use some of the normal Gallant stuff? You probably would want to. So it's like at that point, just, I get it, but like, for good casual fun, I think there's some interesting possibilities. But fun fact, because all of these tamers are 2 colors, it's just making purple hybrids better. Like anytime they do more colors, just immediately makes purple hybrids mill strategy that much more effective. Just wanted to put that out there. But a card that has me absolutely excited and through the moon for is BT21 Flame Mon. So this is not a hero traded card. But it's an absolutely insane card for red hybrids. Like, I could not have dreamt for a better card than this because it has a main ability where you get to suspend this Digimon and then you just get to play a tamer for free. And if you did play a tamer, then you get to just put this card underneath the tamer, which again is insane because that's part of like filling up your Takados with enough inheritables just makes the new Emperor strategy better. It makes the old strategy better, and it just adds more inheritables for whatever you're going to use with your Takado. Like, just the fact that you could raise this out, suspend it, and then play a tamer out for free is absolutely nutty. Sure, you lose your egg, but who cares? Like, honestly, who cares? It's just a free tamer. It's really good. And then the inheritable is plus 2,000. We've seen this on a lot of red hybrid cards because they want to hit a particular DP threshold in order to get their effects off. So this just literally helps put them at that DP threshold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like besides like what was it, the BT7 Takado and I think the BT12 one, or there, I know there's another Takado. Like there's not really a lot of ways for you to add flame on in underneath the stacks or anything. So it's nice to see that for sure.
Yeah. And then something that's a little less interesting is the Alderman from BT21. So Alderman, unfortunately, has a high Digivolution cost. I hate it when they do this. He is a mono red card, so it makes even less sense. Like, at least when they're two colors and they do it, it makes more sense, but like, it just limits the usage of this card. I get what they're going for because when one of your Digimon with a Gunimon or Burning Greymon digivolves into this, it reduces the Digivolution cost by 1. So it's effectively a 3 cost, but again, that's tempo-wise just not good enough. Especially since you're still initially paying 4. To then not pay 4 to pay 3 for it. Like, they could have just cut that whole first line off and then just made the Digivolution cost 3. But whatever. This is the world we live in. This is the card that they decided to make. Then it has security attack plus 1 natively. Not terrible. Because sometimes you do want to be aggressive with level 5s. Especially since Alderman can hit very high DP numbers because of all of the DP increasing. Then he comes with the on delete ability where we get to play a tamer from our hand with an inheritable effect. We get to play a red tamer, more specifically, with an inheritable effect from our hand or trash. So the idea is basically just kind of do what the old Emperor was doing, just on Alderman, which is good. It's fine. The fact that it doesn't come with any additional removals, whatever, would have been nice, but it just seems like it's just trying to be an aggressive card. And then the on delete ability is the same, like inheritable is the same as its native on delete ability. Just being able to constantly spit out your tamers is good. Just because tamers are very hard to interact with. So the less you can make your opponent interact with you, the better. The only problem with these types of cards is there's no way for them to delete themselves. So it's inherently weaker because you can't delete yourself to reset to then do it all over again and loop yourself. But not everyone has that privilege, I guess. So
Yeah,
oh,
because like I know like because I was gonna say like it'd be interesting to probably throw this because like I know with like a lot of the Aldermons they all had the same inheritable effect of doesn't activate security options. So I mean depending how you want to use the red hybrids and everything, this could theoretically potentially be another really good second red like level 5 for you to have and everything if you have the room for it. Because like I know the room's kind of like a little flimsy, I guess. I can't say for sure. I haven't built red hybrids lately,
yeah,
but
you're correct on that. The room is really tight, and at least like the BT7 one still costs 1 to Evo versus costing 3 to Evo, which is not a good exchange rate. 1 versus 3, that's a big difference. The fact that it does replace itself with the tamer is nice, but again, like you just don't want your Digimon to die, and leaving a Digimon on your field for the opponent to interact with is like really bad because they could just de-digivolve it and then you don't get the on delete effect, or they could just bounce it and you don't get the on delete effect, tuck it into security, bottom of deck. Again, still not triggering that on delete effect. So there's ways to get around the fact that it does have that really good ability, which is arguably why leaving Digimon on the field with on delete effects, if they don't have any way to like replay themselves or back themselves up, just is not very effective.
Yeah, and if the fact that, because like you said, there was like a emperor that plays out tamers when he's deleted. So like if you have that emperor and then even this Alderman, you could like have a really wide board of a bunch of the Takato tamers even too.
Yeah, like there's potential and possibilities. It's just the metagame has to change in order for it to actually even be a considerable option. Because right now, as a person who has played Red Hybrids, it's a good card. I just would. There's no room. There's no room or reason to play it, which is unfortunate. And then we got Takuya to go with it. This Takuya is also pretty cracked. Like it's incredibly cracked. So it security ability plays itself like all tamers. It has a start of main ability where one of your tamers may digivolve into, or one of your Digimon or tamers can digivolve into a Digimon card with hybrid or hero in its traits. So this is another more hero centric card from your hand. And then for each of our red tamers with different names, we get to reduce the cost of the Digivolution by 1. So this really wants to be a good hero card to just basically get free evolutions into your higher stages, which is absolutely nutty. But the fact that on base for red hybrids alone, this can make your Digimon, like this can digivolve into a Goonie for 1 is insane. And then if you have the Takuya Koji, that counts as a Koji. Um, then you get to basically get a free Digivolution, which is again just absolutely nutty at just being able to accelerate red hybrids. Then the inheritable ability is during your turn once per turn, when an opponent's security stack is removed, you get to play a red tamer from your hand for free. So it's like cool. I just get to play out tamers for punching you, which just makes it easier to win with. So just insane. This card's just so insane. It's so good.
Yeah, I think if like I said, I haven't played Red Hybrid, but that to me already just based on the inheritable screams I need to play that one.
Yeah, it's an easy 3 to 4 of in the deck instantaneously. Like probably the I would have to rebalance the tamers, but like the Takuya Koji combo pair plus this plus I guess depending on if you're ancient or emperor, you would vary your third Takuya because I don't think there's room for like 4 or 5 different Takuyas. There's no real reason for it. But it really just depends on like how things shape up and line up on what is going to be the supporting Takuya, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you could go ahead and cover Koromon. This card's pretty basic.
Yeah, this is one of the latest reveals that we've had so far. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they reveal more of the Shine Greymon stuff later, but this is a yellow-based Koromon. And it just has a simple inheritable of your turn once per turn. When any of your yellow or red tamers suspend, you get to draw 1 card. So this kind of works with the whole Marcuses from BT. What was that? BT 13? Yeah, BT.
It's all
No,
of them.
BT 12. Yeah, BT 12. Yeah, technically all Marcuses. My bad. But I was just like thinking of the immediate one of when you're Digivolve or the one from BT 12 because you can suspend that, Koromon triggers, get to draw a card just to make sure you get that card you need to Evo into your next line and everything.
Note that this is a egg with the hero trait. I don't know how many hero eggs we're actually going to be getting,
Oh yeah, you're
but
right.
so this is a potential egg for you to use in your hero deck. But I think that based on this, I don't know if they're gonna have Shine be mono yellow or red yellow.
I feel like it's got to be red yellow because I mean all the other protagonist cards that they've done so far with the exception of Tai, has been red in some way. So
I think you're right. I think it is just gonna be another red yellow line, which is fine. Not complaining about that because um, the big thing to me, like when we got the shine support in BT17, it wasn't bad. It was just awkward because it didn't exactly fit the same way that the BT12 and BT13 pieces were playing around with.
Yeah,
And
because it was trying to be more controlling while the older stuff was trying to be more aggressive.
And honestly, like thinking about it, I think Shine like is still a really fantastic deck. As of the recording of this, it's a very budget friendly deck. Outside of Ruin mode, but you don't need Ruin mode at all. Considering you have Burst mode and Burst mode Ace, but just build the OTK variant of the deck, and I think like it could still do you wonders. And hopefully, the new Shine support is going to help support the more OTK centric one because that's the more competitive one. Because like it's the new Shine stuff is like the BT17 stuff is fine. The protection is good, but the big problem is you're like banking on Shine Ace to basically deal all of the damage, and it's just not as good of or safe as an idea. It's not a bad card, don't get me wrong, but it's not something I would like bank on. I would rather bank on that card being like a failsafe because you could be aggressive, and if you can't kill the opponent, then your burst mode is just going to revert back into the shine, and then you could open up for an ace play, and then play out the tamer to be a blocker or whatever, while removing the opponent's Digimon. So like I don't know. I think the OTK variant is better, and I hope that they support more of that. Even though I guess OTKs are inherently degenerate, so I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, you don't even have to play the Shine Ace and everything, because you could theoretically now play the Agumon Ace too.
I still probably would play the Shine because it's searchable. But yeah,
True.
there's opportunity for Bond Ace as well. Like it just you have more you have more options in Shine. And this set's definitely going to give us more options. But like if you are playing a hero deck as of right now, this is the only hero egg we know of. And it's not a bad egg. Draw
Yeah.
engines are usually pretty good, especially since all of the hero tamers are red. Like it just works with all of them. Except for
Yeah, 'cause, I
Ty.
mean, yeah, because it's not even when your tamer attacks; it's just when your tamer suspends. And I'm pretty sure, like we read off, like Takato suspends himself,
Yeah,
if
they
I
all
remember correctly.
suspend, except Ty's not red. So that's
Yeah,
like Secret Rare Ty's not red. Starter deck one is red, so but I don't think that card's a hero trade card, so we'll see.
hard. Yeah, because they haven't like we saw like a very bad picture of it, and it was like I don't think we had like a proper reveal of it. But
I think we
yeah,
did get like a
oh, did we?
better translation. I could try to pull it up real quick.
Yeah,
I
let me.
think it was on DigimonCard.dev. If you
Yeah,
don't use DigimonCard.dev, I would highly recommend any listener to use DigimonCard.dev, one of the better databases. Next to DigimonCard.app, not plugging or shilling or anything, just stating it. They don't have the starter deck stuff up yet. So maybe we don't have. I could have swore I read it somewhere, but it
yeah,
doesn't matter as of right now.
yeah. Just like on another side note and everything, I love how this Koremon's blowing bubbles, kind of similar to how in the Digimon first movie, with Balmon hiding under the bed blowing bubbles with Kari blowing the whistle. I think that's like a funny little cute nod of that, honestly.
It is kind of cute. I guess before we kind of wrap things up, because we're done with spoilers, and I think we had a pretty interesting discussion on the current state of the meta, but just to kind of bring up where the Japanese meta is right now, right now, the best deck is Purple Imperial. That's been doing numbers next to Royal Knights, Dukemon, Sun and Moon, Fenry, Plants, and Cross Hearts. Like those are what a lot of people are experimenting with. Then we have like a lot of one-off decks because they're still in the experimental phase. Where Beelzemon, Examon, Deep Savers, Omnimon, DNA, Purple Hybrids, uh, Blue Armor, Red Hybrids, Yellow Vaccine. Like there's just a lot. Invisimon got a topping, Necromon got a topping, Chronicles, Justmon. Like people are still experimenting, but like the fact that like Imperial Royal Knights and Fenry and the Sun and Moon Toolbox and Gallantmon are still at the top, like, kind of is a little bit telling that we kind of already know what's going to start being in the lead of where the meta is going to develop in BT20 when we get it.
Yeah.
So just thought that was a little fun fact for everyone on the current state of the Japanese meta. I know we don't talk about the Japanese meta a whole lot, but like because we still have, this is the last time we're actually going to have that data to rely on when it comes to making our analysis of what's actually good off the gates. Is it's something like I'm not going to discredit it.
Well, I feel like we'll talk more about the Japanese meta like once we're all actually caught up and everything, because we're all under the same format, so it's like gonna relatively still be like, I mean, granted, yes, it is a best of one, but it's still gonna be somewhat like telling of something, so to say, just of how other people are experimenting with the cards, I guess.
Yeah, it'll. I mean, there's still time. This set's not coming, like 2.5 isn't coming out until the end of the month, so we'll see what happens. And I'm kind of excited for it because I'm really hoping that it shakes up the game enough. I don't exactly have a deck, like, not necessarily looking at this data and saying I don't have a deck that I'm leaning towards, but like I don't really have a reason to move off of the few decks that I have been playing. Like I honestly think like Purple Hybrids is still incredibly strong. Uh, Obviously, Fenry gets better, like literally gets better, and I have access at that. Like I just don't have a new deck that I want to build or play. And right now, according to Japan, they're telling me as of right now, there's no reason to swap off.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair to say, because I mean, like, because when we were even doing like the whole 2.5 cards and everything, and looking at BT20, there's a lot of decks that seem really fun. There's exciting stuff, but it's kind of like the whole thing of like the whole thing you got to think about at the same time is how good are they against all the other decks at the same time? Because like Purple Hybrid, it doesn't care about like the Examon stuff of what they do and everything. Like I think the only like deck out of like the BT20 that kind of has like some kind of relevancy is the Imperial Virus, because the whole thing you talked about was it does one of three things, and that being the floodgate effect. Because it doesn't just stop Digimon from being played. I'm pretty sure it stops Tamers too, if I remember correctly.
Something like that. But yeah, like you could build the deck to have the damage it needs. It also you could build the deck to have the protection, and then obviously it has a potential floodgate to run. And like not to harp all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, but like that this is kind of the example on like where my card analysis is kind of starting to be warped in my overall perception of what's a good card or what's a good deck is based on those three factors that I highlighted earlier on, where it's just like if it's not doing bare minimum two of those things, then can I really call it that competitive of a deck outside of like hyper focused on one of it to where it's doing it absolutely insanely well? So, but hopefully these BT21 spoilers get more exciting, and like I really hope that they announce a ban. I know everyone's like hoping and praying for a ban restriction list, so it's kind of pointless to continue wishing for that. I What's baffling me
It
is
has to be after Worlds. It has to be after
it
Worlds
it
at this
it
point.
needs to be, yes, because I think like once we get BT20 technically 2.5, and if we realize that that's another pseudo dud set where it's just like okay, only one deck out of that entire set realistically became competitively viable, like it's not a good luck. It really is not a good luck where it's just like we only get one new deck a format and then the format really doesn't change if it changes at all. So it's gonna be after Worlds. It might even be as late as like the release of BT21. I could see them doing that, but honestly, like they just for good PR sake, they probably should just announce it like sooner rather than later, so that way we can stop like speculating and talking about it and waiting and hoping and praying. Like, just cut it off at the curb and say, hey, yes, there is a ban and restriction list. This is when we're going to be doing it, or just give it to us and say this is when it's going to take effect. But they want to see probably if BT20 is going to solve any problems, which as of right now, it doesn't look like it's going to do. But that's okay. I guess not everything needs to solve problems. Because it's not like the thing is, it's not adding more problems. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like I mentioned it earlier too, was that don't take like Japanese data as this is going to be exactly to the TR format, because again, gotta keep in mind their formats are somewhat different because of one, they typically like to play with newer decks more than the older decks, but two, they also have best of ones, not best of threes, and sometimes those best of ones versus best of threes have very different results.
Yeah, also just the size difference. It's like, oh yeah, their big tournament was 100 players versus ours, which is 2 to 300 players. Like, there's a huge consistency difference needed for for decks to have a better set of data to pull from to say, yes, this deck is more consistent, therefore it is more competitively viable. Because we've seen like wonky and weird decks always do successful in smaller events, but again, smaller pool of people means easier for rogue decks to exist. That's just a fact. But yeah, so exciting stuff all around. Good discussion all around, and I know this was definitely a longer episode, so I hope everyone at least appreciated the slightly longer episode. Tell us your thoughts about like this episode down in the comments below if you're a watcher, or just write a comment on Spotify, because I know you could do that too. So just let us know if like what your overall thoughts are. And with that, we will be signing off and hopefully see you all in the next episode. Later.